Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members, city officials, and our streaming audience. I would like to welcome you to the December 29th City Council meeting. We have 8 items on our agenda this evening. We're meeting here in chambers, open for public attendance, and streaming live on YouTube. Moving forward, if you would, Ms. Moss, please continue with the roll call of our members.
Thank you, Ringer. Greg Phillips. Payne. Nickerson. Here. Farrell.
Here.
Henderson. Brown. Preston.
Here.
Anthony Phillips.
Here.
Prohl.
Here.
Ms. Henderson and Mr. Greg Phillips are both out of town on previously scheduled trips. Roll call on the motion to excuse Mr. Greg Phillips and Ms. Henderson. Motion by Mr. Prohl, seconded by Mr. Tony Phillips.
Payne.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Motion passes. At this time, if you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The minutes of the previous 2 meetings have been distributed for review. Do we have any additions or corrections to the minutes from the previous 2 meetings? And if so, or if not, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as they are? We'll start with December 12th minutes. Motion to accept.
President Geringer, I would like to make a motion at this time, if it's the appropriate time, to rescind the actions of a previous council meeting on the 26th due to an agenda error of Council Rules 7F.
December 19th. The 19th, yes, sir.
Okay. That would be December 19th on that motion.
So, motion to rescind the actions from the meeting of December 19th due to an agenda error. Do I have a second on that motion? Seconded by Ms. Preston. Roll call on the motion to rescind the actions of the December 19th meeting.
Prohl.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Motion passes. Roll call on the motion to accept the minutes from the December 12th meeting. Motion by Ms. Preston, seconded by Mr. Anthony Phillips. Roll call on the motion.
Payne.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
The minutes have been accepted. We'll now go to reports of our committees.
President Geringer,
Yeah, Ms. Preston.
I would like to make a motion to accept the second agenda that was emailed out on the 26th for this meeting for the 29th.
Motion by Ms. Preston to accept and adopt the second agenda that was mailed out on the 26th in replacement of the previous agenda that was distributed on the previous Friday. Second for that motion? Seconded by Ms. Payne. Roll call on the motion.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
The motion passes. We'll now move to reports of our committees. We'll begin with our Community Affair Committee. In the absence of Mr. Greg Phillips, do any committee members have items to report? Not seeing any, we will move to Human Resources Committee. Ms. Payne.
Thank you, President Geringer. Human Resources, we do not have an item on the agenda this evening and nothing new to report on. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving next to our Development Committee. Ms. Nickerson.
Development has nothing on the agenda tonight, therefore we have nothing to report. However, Greg asked me to announce a community affairs meeting for Monday, January 9th at 6:30. That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to our Finance Committee with Mr. Anthony Phillips.
Thank you, President Geringer. Finance has a few things tonight. We have numbers 3, 4, and 8 on the agenda tonight. Number 3 on the agenda is actually a first read of the budget we've been working on. An ordinance to make appropriation and current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Chiillicothe, State of Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January the 1st, 2023 and ending December the 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency. I will be making a motion and asking council to waive the 3-read rule with me in the appropriate time, and I'll explain a little more of that then. The second item is number 4 on the agenda. It's a first read, an ordinance appropriating funds for the purpose of making payroll, fringe, and pensions for the remainder of 2022 and declaring an emergency. I'll also be asking at the appropriate time that we waive the 3-read rule on that. Number 8 on the agenda, the last item, we actually had a committee meeting tonight. That is item 22142, removal of unnecessary appropriations, which happens at the end of each year by the state ordinance. And at that time, so it's an ordinance removing unnecessary appropriations from the books of the City of Chiillicothe for various funds and declaring an emergency. And I will be making a motion to waive the 3-read rule on that as well. And that is all Finance has. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to Parks and Recreation Committee. In the absence of Ms. Henderson, do any committee members have items to report? Not seeing any, we'll move next to our Safety Service Committee with Ms. Preston.
Thank you, President Geringer. The Safety Service Committee has 2 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is the first reading of ordinance providing for an agreement between the City of Chiillicothe, Ohio and the Ross County Commissioners, whereby the City of Chiillicothe, Ohio will continue to be eligible through 2023 for state reimbursement of costs incurred in appointing counsel for indigent criminal defendants and declaring an emergency. At the appropriate time, I'll request to waive the 3-read rule on that. And we have item number 6. It's a first reading, an ordinance amending section 521.17A titled Maximum Height of Grass and Weeds of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Chiillicothe and declaring an emergency. This is part of the other legislation that passed a few weeks ago. This was another area in the codified ordinances that had that grass, and Mr. Carmen brought it to our attention, so we're amending that ordinance as well. And that's all that Safety Services has. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to our Engineering Committee and City Services and Transit Committee, Mr. Farrow.
Thank you. On behalf of City Services and Transit, we have nothing on the agenda and nothing new to report. On the behalf of the Engineering Committee, we do have item number 1, which is a third reading of an ordinance appropriating $16,000 for plaster and painting at the City of Chiillicothe Administrative Building. This is for the stairwell over there, so we will vote on that tonight, and that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Utilities Committee with Mr. Prohl.
Utilities Committee has 1 item on tonight's agenda. That is item number 7, which is at first read. It is an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Chiillicothe to enter into a water pollution control loan fund agreement on behalf of the city of Chiillicothe for the construction of a wastewater facilities, designated a dedicated payment source for the loan, and declaring an emergency. And we'll let that go to another read at least.
Thank you. We'll now move to reports of our officials. Our auditor, Ms. Spetnagel. Thank you. We'll now move to audience participation. Council Rule 22 does limit each speaker to a 5-minute presentation, total limitation of 15 minutes per any single subject. If you get to the point where you're getting close to 1 minute left, I will try to indicate to you to summarize your presentation. Anyone who wishes to speak, we will need for our records your name and address.
Okay. David White, 179 Church Street. Just 3 questions. Is there a way in which the public can be notified of last-minute changes with some last-minute scheduling changes of this meeting and Monday's meeting? And is there a way that we can be notified when those changes occur? Is there a way to get a copy of the 2023 budget? Preferably electronic, but if hard copies all that's available, that as well. And is council aware of a grant opportunity through Ohio EPA of not more than $10,000 for water line leak detection equipment and training and use of that equipment that has a deadline coming up in sometime in the end of January? It seems like an opportunity that might be available to the municipal water system here. That's all I got.
So on your first 2 items, if you want to provide your email, we can communicate with you and let you know on those types of things. And in addition to that, media outlets, WKKJ, all the media outlets in town are notified of meeting changes, meeting schedules, as well as the communication on committee meetings upcoming. On the last one, I have not seen a request for that to be assigned to a committee, but we'd be glad to bring it up to the appropriate departments and hopefully get that assigned. Sounds like an opportunity. Thank you.
I also want to add that if you look at the city webpage and you go to the auditor's department, the 2023 proposed budget is online. So you can see it on there, or you can always contact my office as well, and I can make sure I can get that emailed to you electronically. You're welcome.
Jason Link, 17 Mead Drive. Just had a couple of questions on a couple of the pieces of legislation you're going to be looking at this evening. The first one has to do with the maximum height of grass and weeds. In that ordinance that you're looking at for tonight, as well as the ordinance that you passed back there on December 12th, the height went from 12 inches to 6 inches. Several weeks ago, I had reached out to Councilwoman Preston about the reason for that change from 12 inches to 6 inches. Councilwoman Preston indicated she wasn't aware of why that was and suggested that I reach out to the mayor and to the chief of police. And I did that. Both the mayor and the chief of police, neither of them were aware of why the change was made from 12 inches to 6 inches. The mayor suggested that the nuisance officer, I didn't know we had a new nuisance officer, was going to get in contact with me, but the nuisance officer didn't get in contact with me either. So my question is to the council members who voted in favor of that, which was all of you, what was the rationale for moving it from 12 inches to 6 inches on the height of tall grass?
That was within the legislation that the chief had proposed. He had sent to us during committee meetings. When we had the original committee meetings, it was included in that, and that is what he requested.
So when the chief, when I got the emails from you from the public records request, the chief had an ordinance from Hilliard, and that was the recommendation in Hilliard's ordinance. I guess I'm just, and I don't know what Hilliard's previous ordinance was. Did they have 12 inches and they went to 6 inches?
When we did several of the researches for the ordinances in the city, most of them were anywhere from 4 to 8 inches. The majority of them were at 6.
It's just, I mean, it's an interesting number because most grass should be between 3 and 4 inches. And so if you miss a cut on your mow, you might be in trouble. But just kind of curious how that decision was made. You know, it's nice that Hilliard has that as their number. Maybe other municipalities have that. You know, we don't have to do what every other municipality does, right? Chiillicothe can determine to do what Chiillicothe would like to do, not just what other municipalities would like to do. The other one is on the loan, authorizing the mayor to enter into this loan for the wastewater treatment plant, the sewer plant. I brought this up a couple meetings ago. I serve on the Water Rate Review Committee, which is a standing committee within the city. Water Rate Review Committee, if they do nothing, it's a 2% increase on the sewer rates. My understanding is the Water Rate Review Committee made a recommendation of 6% increase, but this body has not acted on that. My understanding that the auditor's office, the mayor's office has sent over that recommendation. So I guess I'm just curious whether this body is going to act on that request from the Water Rate Review Committee to raise the rate 6%.
We were talking about whether that was a percentage we were talking about or the surcharge. There was both of those issues. Utilities, I think that'd be a question.
Yes, I believe that's one of the reasons I don't want to move the item number 7 forward until we get some better answers on that.
Right. So just to kind of clarify on all that, so this Water Rate Review Committee, for those who aren't familiar with it, meets every year, one meeting a year. Brad Long, other people from the administration are a part of that meeting, help to inform that Water Rate Review Committee about what the cost of treating sewage is, what the cost of providing water to our residents is. I think I've served on that for 5 years. Every year we've recommended more than the 2% on the sewer side, because as you all know, the sewer is severely underfunded. I'm not disagreeing with the fact we need a new sewer plant. I guess what I'm concerned about is kind of the same thing with this. Why are we making decisions about cutting high grass from 12 inches to 6 inches? I think it's important information for you all to know. If you move forward with the 8%, it's not really just 8%. It's at least 10%, unless you change the standing legislation about the Water Rate Review Committee. Standing legislation there is 2% every year. Whether the Water Rate Review Committee recommends anything else other than that, typically this body has done more than that. Up to 6% is what has been requested in years past. I just think it's very important for us to know what the increase is going to be to the average citizen. 8% is one thing, $8 is another thing. In 2 years, the sewer rates are going to double. If you do the math, sewer rates are going to double in 2 years when that $8 plus the 8% plus the 8%.
Sorry,
just 8%.
I missed your minute. That was your 5. Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up.
It's really going to be at least 10%.
That's your time, Mr. Link.
And if it's more than the 6%,
Mr. Link,
then it's going to be 14%. I just think it's important for everybody to be aware of that as you're making these decisions.
Hi, friends. My name is the Reverend Terry Williams. I reside at 47.5 East Main Street. Just a couple of questions tonight. No one spoke to number 2 on the agenda, which I understand it's customary to have somebody from council speak about each item that's before you, and I noticed that the chairwoman for that particular committee is absent. So I was just wondering if there's anybody from Parks and Rec that could speak to why number 2 is on the agenda at some point. Additionally, I have a question for the auditor, if she'd be willing to entertain a question. I understand that the budget's before council tonight on a first read. Have there been any changes made to the budget between the time it was presented to council and tonight?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So just to let you all know, for me, I'm kind of frustrated that you're sitting here tonight on a $75 million budget, reading it for the first time. And for me, in 10 years of being in this city, I couldn't remember, just thinking back, of a time that we had a mid-year budget that was passed on a first read with waivers. I mean, obviously, the first budget of a council.
How many
usually
times
gets
has it
passed.
actually been read
I'd appreciate having
versus
my time to
I
speak
paused your
uninterrupted,
time.
sir.
So how many times has it actually been
I'd
read?
appreciate having my time uninterrupted, sir. It's my First Amendment time. I'd really appreciate it. Okay. So for me, in this space, taking a look back to see how many times that budget has been passed on a first read with no waivers. It usually gets passed on first read with no waivers at the beginning of a council term. You all know that because you voted on the budget we're currently under. But in that midterm budget, we usually have a little more scrutiny, a little more time, a little more reading in the public. I went and looked back through the records that I have that were provided by Mr. John Fawson of blessed memory, who used to be your clerk. John Fawson had provided me records all the way back to 2000. In the last 22 years, this council has not, to the records that I have, feel free to prove me wrong, passed a budget on a first read with waivers in a midterm budget in 22 years. $75 million, and we're going to read it once in a legal reading and then pass it along. I think it speaks volumes to what has gone on in this place. That's not how we ought to be running this order. It was given to you a long while ago. Changes haven't been made to that budget, and here we sit. Feel free to have your time to speak whatever you like, but that's my piece for tonight.
Thank you for your time. Not seeing any additional participation, we'll move on to participation and correspondence received by the clerk.
Thank you, President Geringer. I have not received anything.
Now moving to new business. Does anyone have any new business that they'd like to bring up? We'll now move on to our legislation. We have 8 items on the agenda this evening. Ms. Moss, whenever you're ready, we'll start with item number 1.
Item number 1 is the third reading of an ordinance appropriating $16,000 for plaster and painting at the City of Chiillicothe Administration Building.
Roll call on the ordinance.
Payne,
Yes.
Nickerson,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Anthony Phillips,
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is the second reading of a resolution expressing cooperation and granting use of a certain portion of Paint Street to Race Penguin LLC for the Chiillicothe Half Marathon.
That item will move to our next agenda, item number 3.
Item number 3 is the first reading of an ordinance to make appropriation for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Chiillicothe, State of Ohio, during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023, and ending December 31, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
President Geringer, if I could make a few comments.
Absolutely.
So to address Mr. Williams, Reverend Williams, before we make a motion, I'm almost at a loss of how to comment. Procedurally, by the book, this is a first read. Functionally, so as a doctor, I do structural and functional issues. That's what two categories I'm constantly talking to patients about. We have structural issues and/or functional issues. Functionally speaking, this budget has been presented to the public and to council several times. This should be the 3-read rule, but technically, as you're stating, on the technical basis, this is on paper a first read. Functionally speaking, this is a 3rd read. There's no questions. I'm going to ask council if anybody has any issues to speak on the record. If you have an issue with the motion that I have stated that I'm going to make on waiving the 3-read rule. Now would be a time for anybody else. Reverend Williams has an issue with that, but does council have an issue with that? If so, now's the time to speak on the record.
Sorry, I just put a, excuse me. I will say, I did have some frustration about, there seemed to be an arbitrary, I don't know, hesitance. I'm sorry. There was a hesitance to passing the budget that just seemed arbitrary. Specifically, just remember Councilperson Henderson referencing just various different elements in the budget about just it not being the right time. And I don't mean to be facetious here, but when we got back the budget with no changes, all of the postponements did seem a bit frustrating and arbitrary. So, Anthony, I totally agree with you on the term of functional. You know, I do think we've given this a lot of time, but I have some frustrations about it. It seemed like maybe a political process of just the grandstanding, not from everyone. I'm not accusing everyone of this, but I certainly saw some elements of unnecessary prolonging of a serious issue.
Mr. Brown, just for your knowledge and for the record, the reason that this isn't as a second read is because Mr. Williams filed a complaint about an error in the agenda to actually get it rescinded from the previous meeting. So the very complainer about the delay in the process and it being a first read is, in fact, one of the obstacles to it being read more times.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. And the back and forth, I was only adding that as far as the political posturing of it. There's merit to that. There's absolutely merit to that. Sure, that's fair. I would just highlight, and this is not a step on you, but just my frustration specifically. I think maybe the Reverend's job is kind of to do that, is to be a party agitator from the outside.
As a party agitator, I agree. And I think Mrs. Henderson's role as a council member is to ask questions about the budget, as every member of council's role is to inquire and find out exactly what is appropriate.
Sure. I don't want to speak too much without her being present, but there was I had a sense of urgency about addressing she had specific grievances about specific items. One that comes to mind is Parks and Rec, and there were issues about tree accounting and just very intentional language about now is not the time for that, and none of that was addressed through all of these postponements. And again, but I take your point. Though.
Okay. So before I make that motion, I just felt like I wanted to clarify those things. So if we were not to waive the 3-read rule tonight on this agenda, we could come back Saturday and then again on Monday. And I don't believe anybody else would have any other additional concerns or the public would weigh in anymore. I feel in good conscience that for, but which is, I'm asking now for the record, does anybody else have any concerns about waiving the 3-read rule tonight? Okay, so we'll make some history tonight. We'll go ahead and do that. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3-read rule on agenda item number 3.
Seconded by Mr. Farrow. Roll call on the motion to waive the 3-read rule.
Payne.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Motion passes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Prohl.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Moving on to item number 4.
Item number 4 is the first reading of an ordinance appropriating funds for the purpose of making payroll, fringe, and pensions for the remainder of 2022 and declaring an emergency.
President Geringer, at this time, I would like to make a motion to waive the 3-read rule on this item.
Motion by Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Prohl. Roll call on the motion to waive the 3-read rule.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Oh, sorry. Roll call on the ordinance.
Payne.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Moving on to item 5.
Item number 5 is the first reading of an ordinance providing for an agreement between the City
President
of Chiillicothe.
Geringer, I'm sorry.
Yes, Ms. Preston.
I would like to make a motion to waive the 3-read rule on this item.
Motion to waive the 3-read rule by Ms. Preston, seconded by Mr. Farrow. Roll call on the motion.
Payne.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Henderson. Sorry. Brown.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Motion passes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Item number 6.
Item number 6 is the first reading of an ordinance amending section 521.17A titled Maximum Height of Grass and Weeds of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Chiillicothe and declaring an emergency.
This item will move to our next agenda. Item number 7.
Item number 7 is the first reading of an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Chiillicothe to enter into a water pollution control loan fund agreement on behalf of the City of Chiillicothe for construction of wastewater facilities, designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan and declaring an emergency.
This item will move to our next agenda. Item number 8.
Item number 8 is the first reading of an ordinance removing unnecessary appropriations from the books of the City of Chiillicothe for various funds and declaring an emergency.
Council President Geringer, I would like to make a motion to waive the 3-read rule on this item.
Motion by Mr. Tony Phillips, seconded by Ms. Payne. Roll call on the motion to waive the 3-read rule.
Anthony Phillips.
Yes.
Prohl.
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Payne,
Yes.
Nickerson,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Farrow,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Anthony Phillips,
Yes.
Nickerson,
Yes.
Prohl,
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
The ordinance passes. At this time, is there any additional items that need to be brought up at this time? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion by Ms. Preston, seconded by Ms. Payne. Roll call on the motion.
Nickerson,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Prohl,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Anthony Phillips,
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Have a great evening.